Hello everyone. This session will look at structure and function of DNA polymerases of prokaryotes. It is interesting to note how changes in conformations help an entire process to be successfully completed. And it is also very interesting to learn how to give one's best by observing how these molecules function in vivo. Let us now look at what are the outcomes of this session. One, one will be able to grasp or comprehend how DNA polymerases using a single active site can carry out its specific catalytic functions. We will be able to understand the general structure of the single subunit DNA polymerases, which would include DNA polymerase 1. And that the DNA polymerases are able to synthesize DNA accurately and also proofread whatever they have synthesized due to this structural conformity that they have. We also will be able to look at the structure of DNA polymerase 3, which is a multi-subunit complex, and how this multi-subunit complex as a single unit is able to attribute to the enzyme being the main polymerizing enzyme of replication. Of course, one will get an overview of their roles in the entire mechanism of replication. Let us look at just the basic structure of DNA polymerases. Interestingly, the DNA polymerases look like a right hand with a palm, with the fingers and with the thumb. Now, the palm region is able to hold the DNA at the origin of replication where it has opened up, okay, and having opened up, it has bound to the primer, and therefore there's a primer template junction formed over here. So basically what we are looking at is that the which means the DNA polymerase is able to bind to the primer template junction with great efficiency. You can see the same in this structure, which is the ribbon structure of the single subunit or the single polypeptide. You can see that this forms the palm region, this forms the fingers, and this forms the thumb. So the fingers, palm, and the thumb are responsible for the DNA synthesis in the 5' to 3' directions. Therefore, this becomes the domain for polymerization, while you have this domain which is responsible for 3', 5' exonuclease domain. So this domain synthesizes the DNA, while this domain is able to proofread the synthesis that has been carried out. And thereby, the polymerases are not just able to synthesize DNA, but they are also able to ensure that there is minimum mistakes made by them in the process of carrying out the synthesis of DNA. So the palm region of the DNA polymerases has what is called as beta-pleated sheets. So this area has beta-pleated sheets present as motifs, and these beta-pleated sheets are associated with metal ions, which could be either zinc metal ions or magnesium. And both zinc and magnesium have an important role as metal ions present in the DNA polymerases, have a very important role in catalysis per se. Therefore, let us now look at how the palm is able to maintain the specificity of the enzyme, and also the catalysis carry out the catalytic activity of the enzyme. So, when one observes the palm region, so let's consider that this part that has been shown over here is the palm region. This is the template and this is the primer. So this is the end of the primer. So as we had mentioned earlier, the palm region holds on to the template primer junction, and what can be observed over here is the nucleotide, incoming nucleotide. So you can have the incoming nucleotide from here, and this nucleotide is associating with the template. So the template has the nucleotide which can be read by the DNA polymerase And this against the C, what should enter is G. So the three domains together, which means the finger, the palm, and the thumb together, can accommodate a correct base pair. So this ability to gauge whether the correct base pair has been formed is attributed not just to the palm region but also to the finger and the thumb per se. So therefore all the three domains together are able to actually recognize a correct base pair, and that is that ability to gauge whether it is a correct base pair is due to the contributions made by the metal ions. So what we are going to understand is that the metal ions present, so there are generally two metal ions that are present in the palm region, and of which one of the metal ion is going to interact with the H of the 3' OH of the primer. So if this is the primer, the metal ion is going to interact with the H of the 3' OH of the primer end, and because it interacts with the H, what happens is that this O becomes highly negative in its characteristic, and therefore it acts as a good nucleophile. So, and everyone knows that the DNA polymerases need this OH as a nucleophile to carry out its catalytic function. So when the metal ion holds the H of the OH, the O minus is ready for a nucleophilic attack. So in fact, one can say that a very conducive environment has been formed for the O minus to act as a nucleophile. The second metal ion is able to attach to the, so if this is the incoming nucleotide, one can see that this is the alpha phosphate, this is the beta phosphate, and this is the gamma phosphate. So the metal ion, the second metal ion, is able to interact with the O moieties of the phosphates, thereby holding the phosphates in a certain spatial arrangement. Now, because it is able to hold it in a spatial arrangement, you can observe that the proximity of the alpha phosphate to the O minus makes a conducive environment for the nucleophilic attack. And thereby, both the metal ions together are able to make an environment which is conducive for the nucleophilic attack to happen. Now, interestingly, if this were not the correct base pair, then you would not have had the hydrogen bonds formed. And if that is not happening, the positioning of these three phosphates may not be as it is observed in this case. And in that circumstance, the nucleophilic attack will not happen, which we will also see in the later slides. But that is the understanding. So what we observe over here is that the amino acids that are present in the palm region, along with the metal ions present, are able to create an environment for the interaction of the incoming nucleotide with the primer in such a way that the nucleophilic attack is conducive. So as observed, the second metal ion positions the alpha phosphate for the conducive nucleophilic attack. So therefore, we can from this basically conclude that the zinc and magnesium ions play an important role in catalysis. So in fact, it becomes a requisite for DNA replication. So a DNA polymerase, because of the presence of the metal ions within it, is able to carry out catalysis. Now let us also look at the fact that the palm is able to gauge that what has come in as a nucleotide is the correct nucleotide. So it is able to differentiate, the DNA polymerases are able to differentiate between a correct base pair and an incorrect base pair. This is extremely important for replication because by the ability of the DNA polymerase to actually differentiate between a correct base pair and incorrect base pair, they are able to carry out replication with full fidelity. That means what they are adding is a correct base pair is being ensured by the palm region. Now, how does that happen? So, in fact, please consider that the the palm region or the DNA polymerases are not able to identify the incoming nucleotide. So they are not reading whether it is an A or a T or a G or a C that is coming in, but what they are able to assess is that whether the incoming nucleotide is forming a correct base pair or not. If it is forming the correct base pair, then what is observed is that the amino acids present in the palm region are able to hydrogen bond with the minor groove that is formed because of the base pairing. Now, suppose you have an incorrect nucleotide coming in. So, if it is the incorrect nucleotide coming in, you would observe that there is no hydrogen base pair formed between the template and the incoming nucleotide, by lieu of which you will find that the amino acids are not able to position because they are not able to interact with the incoming nucleotide as it is not forming the correct base pair. So you can see that how the OH over here of this sugar is interacting with the palm, whereas this OH is misplaced. It is not fitting into the pocket that is there for its positioning. And therefore, what happens is the spatial arrangement because of the wrong nucleotide is different from the spatial arrangement due to a correct nucleotide. So if the wrong nucleotide comes in, the hydrogen bonding is not happening, and because the hydrogen bonding is not happening properly, the alpha phosphate is going to be at a distance from the OH, whereas in this case you can see that the alpha phosphate is closer to the OH. So therefore the nucleophilic attack is more feasible when it is a correct base pair, but it is less feasible when it is not a correct base pair or when the correct base pair is not formed. So in fact, the DNA polymerases are able to gauge whether an AT base pair has been formed or a GC base pair has been formed. If an AG is being formed, then you would have a condition like this, and because you have a condition like this, you do not have the phosphodiester bond formed at all, because it is not a conducive environment for the nucleophilic attack to happen. Whereas if the correct base pair has come in, that is an AT base pair, so the DNA polymerase is able to gauge that a correct base pair has been formed, and therefore the positioning of the incoming nucleotide is such that a nucleophilic attack happens and the phosphodiester bond between the primer and the incoming nucleotide takes place. Thereby, the replication will move forward in this case, whereas in this case, the replication will not move forward. So therefore, this is the kind of counter checking by the DNA polymerase itself to ensure that a correct base pair has formed, because it is able to assess the AT and GC. And if you can note, the AT and the GC are similar spatially. Okay, and therefore the DNA polymerase shows this specificity. It's a very clear indication that the DNA polymerases are specific for AT base pair and GC base pair, but they are not able to easily allow a AG or a TC or a AC to basically come and properly get associated with the active site. And hence this becomes an important aspect of looking at the fact that the microenvironment created in the active site is responsible for ensuring that there is a specificity maintained. Please note one more thing. It is that the DNA polymerases show what is called as group specificity. So it does not, or it is not specific only for ATP coming in. It is not specific only for GTP coming in, or specific just for TTP or a CTP coming in. Any of these four nucleotides are able to interact with the active site to be able to introduce into the newly synthesized DNA. So therefore, the DNA polymerases are able to allow catalysis for all the four nucleotides, and hence it is group specificity and not absolute specificity that the enzyme is showing. So this is important, that is hydrogen bonding with the correct base pair, that is basically responsible for allowing catalysis to move forward. Now we come to basically another specificity that the palm is able to allow, and that is that the DNA polymerases will only allow deoxyribonucleotides to form a base pair and not ribonucleotides. So, in other words, the DNA polymerases are able to differentiate between deoxyribonucleotides and ribonucleotides. So, the palm that has a microenvironment can also recognize or differentiate between these two. So as the picture suggests, there are certain discriminator amino acids that are present in the palm region, and these discriminator amino acids are able to associate with deoxyribonucleotides, but they are not able to associate with ribonucleotides. And because of that, what happens is the spatial arrangement of the nucleotide varies. If you can see over here, the discriminator amino acids can interact with the sugar component in such a way that this OH fits into the pocket over here, and therefore the positioning of the alpha phosphate is conducive for a nucleophilic attack. While in case of nucleotides, the discriminator amino acid is not able to interact with the sugar moiety as well because of the presence of this OH, and thereby you can see that this OH, that is a 3' OH, is not able to enter the space that it should enter, and because this does not enter the space it should enter, the positioning of the alpha phosphate has shifted. So you can see easily here is where the alpha phosphate was when you have the deoxyribonucleotide, but when you have the ribonucleotide, the position of the alpha phosphate has shifted, which increases the distance between the 3' OH of the primer and the incoming nucleotide, and therefore you can observe that this spatial positioning is not conducible for a nucleophilic attack. So therefore, the DNA polymerases will not allow formation of a phosphodiester bond between the primer and the incoming ribonucleotide, but it will allow the phosphodiester bond to be formed between a deoxyribonucleotide and the primer. So this is what has been explained per se over here. The ribose sugar is not compatible with the discriminatory amino acids, and therefore the nucleophilic attack is not conducive. So this is important, and because of this, there is the specificity for only deoxyribonucleotides and not ribonucleotides. Now, having looked at what or how the palm is contributing to the catalysis of the DNA polymerases, let us now look at what the finger is doing. So, the finger part of the DNA polymerases has specifically a helix region which is called as the O helix. And this O helix, okay, can exist in two conformations. One is what is called as the open conformation, and one is what is called as a closed conformation. So when it is open, the helix is not interacting with the nucleotide that is coming into the to the catalytic region or to the active site, while when it is closed, it is in a very intimate interaction with the incoming nucleotide, and because of this interaction that it has with the incoming nucleotide, it makes the catalysis more feasible. So the efficiency with which the catalysis happens is becoming greater because of the closing of the closing in of the O helix onto the palm region. So as you can see, if this is the nucleotide that is coming in, so we can see that here you have on the template, so this is the template and this is the primer. So the primer has its 3' OH ready for the nucleophilic attack, and the template has exposed the nucleotide against which you have to have the complementary nucleotide coming in. So if this is C, the incoming nucleotide which is going to make a correct base pair is going to be the GTP, and therefore when this comes in, as mentioned earlier, this metal ion will interact with the H to make O a more nucleophile or a efficient nucleophile, and this metal ion is going to interact with phosphates in such a way that the alpha phosphate is closer to the 3' OH to make a to enable the 3' OH to make a nucleophilic attack on the phosphate. Thereby, what happens is that when this interacts with the metal ions in the palm, simultaneously the O helix part of the finger closes in, because the lysine and arginine present in the O helix, being positively charged, are able to interact with the phosphates of the incoming trinucleotide. And so the beta phosphate and the gamma phosphate interacts with the lysine and the arginine, thereby these phosphates not being available for a nucleophilic attack, only the alpha phosphate being brought close to the 3' OH, so that there is a nucleophilic attack possible over here. Secondly, you also have a tyrosine residue which can interact with the nitrogen base to ensure that the hydrogen base pairing happens more efficiently. So thereby, by all this, an open structure can become a closed structure by the finger region closing in. And so the understanding is that the finger closes in to enhance catalysis by interacting with the incoming nucleotide. So this is where it is interacting and enabling it to bind to metal ions. So in fact, its closing in also allows the nucleotide to bind to the two metal ions properly. So thereby the entire catalysis process becomes more conducive. Another thing that the finger does is that at the point where you have the palm and the junction of the finger, so consider this is the palm and this is the junction of the finger, you have the template bending at this position. So when it bends at this position, what happens is the next nucleotide is outside the palm, whereas it is only this nucleotide which is inside the palm, and so the hydrogen bonding will happen only with this nucleotide and not the nucleotide that is present over here. Therefore, the 90 degrees bend in the template exposes only one base on the template for hydrogen bonding, and therefore both the specificity and the catalysis is helped by the finger region. So now let us come to what is the role of the thumb. So this is one of the domains. So what is the thumb as a domain doing in the function of the DNA polymerases? So as observed earlier, the DNA polymerases will bind to the primer template junction. On binding to the primer template junction, as mentioned earlier, the finger is able to create a 90-degree bend over here, ensuring that this nucleotide is not part of the active site. It is only this nucleotide or the template base which is part of the active site, and therefore the incoming nucleotide interacts with this template base. And the 3' OH is in proximity to this. So the metal ions will bind to the phosphate, the finger will bind to the phosphates, closing in the nucleotide onto the palm region so that the phosphodiester bond is formed. So that is what the fingers and the palm do. So the question is, what does the thumb region do? The role of the thumb region is that it binds to this entire thing. So when the new DNA is formed over here, when we say new DNA, that is the incoming nucleotide binds with the primer, the thumb is attaching itself to this, and the attachment of the thumb to the substrate is ensuring that the DNA polymerase does not fall off from the DNA. So effectively what happens is that the thumb is ensuring the correct positioning of the substrate with the active site. That is one thing that is done. And the second thing is that because it remains associated with the DNA, it is not falling off, so therefore it is contributing to the processivity of the enzyme. The definition of processivity is that once the enzyme is associating with its substrate, it continues catalysis for as long as it is associated with the substrate. So the number of nucleotides that can be added by one DNA polymerase at one stretch is what the processivity is. And since the thumb can remain associate or can help the DNA polymerase to remain associated with the DNA, so therefore Since this association is there, it helps the DNA polymerase to add more nucleotides by the single enzyme itself. And therefore, it is contributing to what is called as processivity. So this is an important phenomenon of DNA polymerases, and this phenomenon in the single subunit DNA polymerases is aided by the thumb region. So the thumb region does not really have a role in catalysis per se, but it is definitely helping the enzyme to remain associated with the substrate in order to carry out the catalysis. Now we will look at the 3' 5' exonuclease activity. So we already know that the 3' 5' exonuclease activity of the DNA polymerases helps in removing the wrong nucleotides. So effectively, we know that the palm, thumb and the finger together ensure that the primer template junction is bound to bi, or the DNA is bound to bi the polymerase. Now suppose we have a condition where instead of a correct base, a correct nucleotide, a wrong nucleotide comes in. So if a wrong nucleotide comes in, you do not have a base pairing, which is something that the enzyme is able to assess. And on assessing the fact that this base pairing is not happening, what is observed is that the hold of the enzyme on the substrate decreases and it releases the primer template junction. And on releasing the primer template junction, it reaches the region where you have the 3' 5' exonuclease active site. So you can see it is just that the active site is just below the palm region, which is the main active site. So the 3' 5' exonuclease activity happens at this site. Because of its 3' 5' exonuclease activity is able to remove the wrong nucleotide. That means the phosphodiester link between the wrong nucleotide and the template and the primer or the newly synthesized DNA happens. And once the wrong nucleotide has been removed, the primer template junction goes back to the palm region, and there the correct nucleotide has been added. When the correct nucleotide is added and there is hydrogen base pairing, you would again have the DNA polymerase proceeding with replication. So one effectively observes that if there is a mismatched base pair, then the replication process halts, the primer template or the DNA goes to the exonuclease active site to remove the wrong nucleotide. So this is where proofreading is therefore happening. And after the proofreading has been taken care of, the DNA comes back to the catalytic site and the process of replication is continued. So this is what the exonuclease activity, or how the exonuclease activity by the DNA polymerases take place. The DNA pol 1, as already mentioned earlier, has not just 3' 5' exonuclease activity, but DNA polymerase 1, unlike all the other polymerases, has an additional exonuclease activity which is called as the 5' 3' exonuclease activity. And so what one observes is, if most single subunit DNA polymerases just have this portion, and this conformation includes the finger, the palm region and the thumb, and of course the exonuclease activity site, then the DNA pol 1 has an additional domain, and this additional domain is which is having the 5' 3' exonuclease activity. Now what is the role of this 5' 3' exonuclease activity? The role of this is in what is called as primer removal that happens in the elongation process of replication. So the understanding of that would be more clear when the elongation of the process is being taken up. But understandably, DNA pol 1 has an important role to play in the process of replication because it is actively involved during the elongation process of the replication, simply because it can remove primers. And this property of being able to remove the primer is associated with the domain that helps in the 5' 3' exonuclease activity. Now this DNA pol 1 has been engineered in such a way to be able to form what is called as a fragment called the Leno fragment. Now the Leno fragment is when the first 300 odd amino acids have been proteolytically removed, or this portion or this domain is completely cleaved off, then what happens is that now the DNA pol 1 is just simply a polymerizing enzyme with 3' 5' exonuclease activity. It no longer has the 5' 3' exonuclease activity. So if this domain is removed, what remains is what is called as the Leno fragment. Now this Leno fragment has, therefore, I'm repeating, it has the 5' 3' synthesis activity, and it also has a 3' 5' exonuclease activity. If one wishes, one can also remove the 3' 5' exonuclease activity by introducing a single point mutation, and the point mutation will inactivate the exonuclease activity, thereby the Leno fragment now having only the 5' 3' synthesis activity. So therefore, to understand synthesis of DNA, many times a mutated DNA pol 1 has been used where it only has its polymerizing activity, but it does not have its 3' 5' exonuclease activity, and by having removed this domain, it already doesn't have the 5' 3' exonuclease activity. So structurally and functionally, therefore, DNA pol 1 is little different from all the other polymerases. Now we come to the DNA pol 3, which is a holoenzyme. So what do we mean by a holoenzyme? When you have the core catalytic enzyme with ancillary proteins, so together several subunits make up the complete enzyme. Then it is called as the holoenzyme. So to understand that, let's look at this. So this figure is basically looking at the dimer, or it is basically looking at two DNA polymerase core enzymes added to form the holoenzyme. So what is the core enzyme of the DNA polymerase? 3. So the alpha, the theta and the epsilon, this 3 is what is the core enzyme. So you can just have the core enzyme of the DNA pol 3 functioning, because the catalytic activity of the entire DNA pol 3 lies with the core enzyme. So alpha subunit is able to carry out the 5' 3' polymerizing action, whereas the epsilon is able to carry out the 3' 5' exonuclease activity, and the theta is stabilizing the entire structure by holding the alpha, epsilon and the theta together. So the final holoenzyme has two core enzymes present. So you can see over here you have two core enzymes that are present. Now the dimerization of these two core enzymes is done by another subunit which is called as a tau. So two tau subunits will hold the two core together. So you may basically say that the tau proteins bridge the two cores, or it dimerizes the two core enzymes. Now this tau subunit is also associated with another complex which is called as the gamma complex. This gamma complex is made up of several subunits. So you have what is called as delta, delta prime, gamma, psi and chi. So these are together forming what is called as the gamma complex. And this gamma complex plays a very important role in the functioning of the DNA polymerase 3. We will see in a while. This is what is called as the beta subunit of the holoenzyme. And the beta subunit is basically a donut shaped structure which is also called as a clamp. And the gamma complex is also called as a clamp loader. So therefore, the two core enzymes with the two tau subunits attached to the gamma complex, which also is now attached to two beta subunits on each of the core, is forming the entire holoenzyme. So therefore, the DNA polymerase 3 is made up of almost 10 different subunits. And it is asymmetric. Why is it asymmetric? Because when you draw a line of symmetry, you will not find complete symmetry because of the presence of the gamma complex. So therefore, it is not a symmetric dimer, it is an asymmetric dimer, but the DNA pol 3 during replication functions as a dimer. Okay. Now let us understand this thing again. So you have the alpha subunit of the core associated with the epsilon and the theta. Okay. You have the second core present over here. This is associated by the tau subunits. The tau subunits is associated with the gamma complex, and the gamma complex holds what is called as the beta clamp, and these beta clamps are loaded onto the cores. But let us now first understand that if you have the DNA pol 3 associating at the origin of replication, these are the regions where you have the primer template junction. So this is the DNA that is open because of it unwinding at the origin of replication, and you have the primer being associated at the origin. So you have the primer template junction formed, and the beta subunit can clamp on the primer template junction. So basically what we understand is that this gamma complex, which is also called as the clamp loader, clamps the clamp on the DNA at the primer template junction. Effectively, to understand this, the beta subunit or the beta clamp has an affinity only for primer template junction. You cannot have the gamma complex loading the beta clamp on a single strand. It can only load the beta clamp on a primer template junction, thereby ensuring that the core complex is associated with the primer template junction so that it can add the first nucleotide on the 3' OH end of the primer. So you can see how the whole complex is ensuring that there is a complete interaction of the DNA pol 3 with the DNA. Why? Because the synthesis has to be carried out. But what is more important here to notice that because the clamp is clamped and to the clamp is attached the core, the clamp is holding the DNA pol 3 to the DNA. So the clamp is fixing the core on the DNA. So the dissociation of the core will not happen, and therefore the beta clamp is actually contributing to the processivity of the DNA pol 3. Because you have a clamping in of the beta clamp and the clamp itself is associated with the core, so if the beta clamp does not open, until then the DNA pol 3 will always be associated with the DNA. So therefore the high processivity of the DNA pol 3 is because of the presence of the beta clamp. In other words, one can say that the core enzyme is contributing to the catalysis of DNA pol 3, while the beta clamp, which is an ancillary protein, is contributing to the processivity of the DNA pol 3. And as stated earlier, or as one knows, the processivity of the DNA pol 3 is very high. And because the processivity of DNA pol 3 is very high, the rate at which it can add nucleotides is also very high. And at one stretch, the DNA pol 3 is able to add many nucleotides. And therefore, it becomes the main polymerizing enzyme because of these two facts. One, that the core enzyme is always associated with the DNA, and that it is associated with the DNA because of the beta clamp. And who associates the beta clamp with the core? It is the clamp loader. So unless the core enzymes are not associated with the other ancillary proteins, the pol 3 does not function as efficiently without the ancillary proteins. So the holoenzyme is much more efficient compared to just the core enzymes. So although the catalysis lies with the core enzyme, as a complete holoenzyme, its functioning is more efficient. And therefore, the DNA pol 3, when it is carrying out DNA replication, it functions in the form of a holoenzyme. So this is how basically it would look. You know that the core looks like the 3-domain structure, that is the finger, thumb and the palm. Okay. These two are the tau regions. The tau region has a flexible region over here. So you can have the DNA pol moving like this or coming in like this because this portion is flexible. This tau is finally associated with the gamma complex. You can see that you have multi subunits. So you have the delta prime, you have the gamma, you have the psi, and then you have the chi. So all these are forming the gamma complex. The gamma complex in turn is associated with the beta clamp. The beta clamp can exist in two conformations. This that you see over here, when it is bound to the gamma complex, it is present in the open complex form. But when it is attached to the primer template junction, it closes. So the beta clamp can be open or can be closed, but it closes in only when it is associated with the primer template junction. When it is associated with the gamma complex, it is still in the open form, and that is how it should be present, because only then you can have the DNA being only then you can have the beta clamp getting clamped onto the DNA. So if you have a DNA over here, the beta clamp will clamp in on the DNA that is going in, and that is how it clamps into the DNA over here. Interestingly, there are many reports that suggest that the DNA pol 3 can also exist in this form, where you have not two cores, but you have three cores associated. So the point is that when you have synthesis happening, there may be requirement of more than two core enzymes, and therefore the third core enzyme is always ready to take place of one of the core enzymes when one of the core enzyme dissociates from the DNA, to ensure that replication proceeds without any problem. So this is something that is very interesting, and interesting enough to understand how, because it is a multi-subunit complex, you have various functionalities associated with only one enzyme, and together it functions, or it becomes, or it is responsible for becoming the main polymerizing enzyme. So DNA pol 3 synthesizes in the 5' to 3' direction. It can carry out proofreading because it has a 3', 5' exonuclease activity. It is highly processive because it has the beta subunits, and it can carry out synthesis of DNA in both the DNA strands because it has two cores attached to each other. And when the DNA pol goes towards the replication or moves in the direction of the replication fork, both the core enzymes are synthesizing on both the strands of the DNA, which act as the templates. So you can see that all this is happening because it is a holo enzyme, and this is ready to always load another beta complex when you have one DNA pol dissociating and another DNA pol coming in, which is already ready. Okay, then the gamma complex is also ready with an open subunit to add this DNA polymerase and to clamp it with a beta clamp. So you can see how efficiently it functions as a holo enzyme. So let us just look at how the clamp loader is working, that is the gamma complex. So what one observes is that here you have the delta prime, you have the psi, the gamma, and there you have the chi. So all these subunits can actually associate with the beta clamp. Now the clamp loader requires the help of, or uses ATP to carry out its work. So what is observed is that on utilizing one ATP, the clamp is associated with the clamp loader. So you can see that the clamp loader binds to the beta clamp, and when it binds to the beta clamp, it opens the beta clamp. So the conformation of the beta clamp is such that it is in its open configuration, and that happens because it utilizes ATP to ensure that it is in the open conformation. Now, when the primer template junction is available, the clamp loader will basically clamp the beta subunit at the primer template junction. Remember, not just the template, it needs the primer template junction. So the affinity of the beta clamp is high for a primer template junction. In other words, a double-stranded DNA rather than a single-stranded DNA. And during initiation or during replication beginning, the only double-stranded DNA that is present is the primer template junction. So therefore, the loading of the beta clamp is on the primer template junction, and that is one of the key requisites for the success of replication to happen. Once the beta subunit clamps onto the primer template junction, the conformation of the beta subunit, or the configuration of the beta subunit going from open to closed, its affinity to bind to primer template junction has increased, but its affinity to bind to the clamp loader decreases, and therefore the clamp loader releases itself from the beta subunit, leaving the beta subunit on the primer template junction. So when you have the beta subunit present over here, you will automatically have the core of the DNA pol 3 coming and binding to the beta subunit. Thereby the DNA pol 3 is associating with the DNA. So as again you can see, it's a cycle that the clamp loader is forming, but in this configuration the beta clamp does not have affinity for clamp loader. So therefore only in the presence of ATP the clamp changes its conformation, and in this conformation the beta clamp has a higher affinity to bind to the clamp loader. Now the clamp loader is ready to load the beta subunit onto a primer template junction. So this is how the clamp loader functions, and that is how the holoenzyme functions efficiently. So the beta clamp increases the processivity by several folds. This is the success story of DNA pol 3, of it being the main polymerizing enzyme. Let's conclude. The catalytic domains of the DNA polymerases create a microenvironment due to which high specificity and activity, including that of exonuclease activity, is possible. The DNA polymerases have a structure resembling a right palm with the fingers and thumb as additional domains that both help in the function of the DNA polymerases. And the DNA polymerase 1 has an additional domain with the function of 5' 3' exonuclease activity. The DNA pol 3 as a holoenzyme with the core enzyme and the ancillary proteins together, in which the clamp and the clamp loader together increase the processivity of the enzyme. So this is very, very important, thus making it the main polymerizing enzyme in replication. Thus, the structure function attributes of DNA polymerases enable them to synthesize DNA, proofread to minimize errors, to maintain fidelity, and work with high processivity to ensure that the entire length of DNA is replicated. Thank you.